Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Al Hewer. I am Terry Shenfield's partner in A&T Lectures, and I do a bunch of other things. I teach at Rutgers. I teach at the respiratory program at County College of Morris in Northwestern New Jersey, edit Egan's Fundamentals textbook, and do some other stuff involved on a state level. One of our other speaker, Gary Kaufman, is very involved at the national level with the AARC. So, his lectures will be very, very exciting. So anyhow, the first of my two lectures is all about advancing our profession through leadership, engagement, and perseverance. And I gave a similar, it wasn't the exact same lecture, but not this past year, the year before, 2021, the fall of 2021. I actually gave a similar lecture to our state society at our in-person conference. Since then, because there's been some evolution, I've actually updated it, but it's a topic that I'm passionate about. I think that I feel that apathy sucks. I think some people are where they are because they're apathetic. Some people are where they are because they've had unfortunate circumstances. And if we expect our profession to advance, it's not going to happen through osmosis. It's going to take a collective effort of myself and Terry and Gary, but all of you guys and much more. And that's really what this presentation is all about. Some of the specific learning objectives include looking at a brief comparison of the advancement of respiratory therapy or respiratory care in comparison to physical therapy. And towards that end, I actually got some of the material about a year ago, the foundational material from a friend and colleague of mine who's the program director of the physical therapy program at the school I teach at Rutgers, Dr. Nancy Kirsch. She and I actually did most of our PhD together as well. She's just a wonderful human being. But anyhow, so she enlightened me to a lot of the things that were going on in physical therapy and how they've advanced their profession. I obviously did research on my own to augment and complement that as well. I want to tell you right now. So I have colleagues, friends, et cetera, that are physical therapists, physical therapy educators. So some of the comments I'm going to make is really more a tribute to physical therapy in that profession than anything negative about them. We'll also focus on initiatives which have actually advanced our profession. So it's like a lot of stories. There's good news and there's bad news. So the good news is that we've been in existence for crudely around 60 years. Depending upon when you start counting. And when you count the fact that, nursing and even physical therapy, a lot of other allied health professions have been around longer than respiratory therapy has. We've done a lot in a relatively shorter span of time. We're going to talk about some of those. We're also going to look at some of the barriers to our advancement. And some of them will be, the personal stuff, the people that are in our profession, but a lot of it's going to be again, looking at the environment, both the internal and external environment, and, looking at things that have stood in our way. But then we're also going to compare strategies to overcome these barriers. What we need to do from here. And again, I don't say that I'm an absolute expert. I talk to experts. I'm an expert in certain areas, but not at all. But I'm very blessed in that I'm surrounded by, including people like Gary Kaufman, Rob Chatburn. In my work that I do with Egan's Fundamentals of Respiratory Care, I get to interact with folks that are they actually do a lot of the foundational research in these areas. So we'll talk about that. And like I do with all of my presentations, and actually my colleagues do as well, I'll furnish you with additional resources if you want to drill down and learn more about this. The last thing I want to say before I move on is, my paradigm, and again, I made a point of saying, one of our other speakers, Gary Kaufman, is very involved on the national level. I presented nationally, but I'm not nearly as involved. So do understand when, some of the material in these slides, my paradigm is New York, New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, quite frankly. So I hope, I don't mean to infer that that's, that I don't mean to make anybody feel disenfranchised who's not from, this geographic area. It's just kind of like it's the contextual framework, and just take it as that. So we look at things like comparing the educational requirements for respiratory care, respiratory therapy versus physical therapy. And, you know, so, and I obviously took these blocks of time, these really gross blocks of time, 1960s, 80s, 90s, you know, 2000. So there's obviously things that occurred in between these blocks. But you look at the 60s, and you really look at, by that time, the majority of the programs for physical therapy were bachelors, and there were just starting to be some master's degree programs. We were actually known as, you know, oxygen, oxygen therapists, oxygen technicians, if you will. And a lot of the entry, the training and education for respiratory therapy was basically on-the-job training. That, you know, these I'm going to say hospital-based programs, they weren't even really academic programs. They were literally, you know, you did your, you know, 4 or 8 week training program, and you were probably working simultaneously, and then you were just, you know, kicked out of the nest, so to speak. In the 80s, we had kind of this combination of on-the-job trainees, and there were some certificate programs that were starting to open up. Whereas physical therapy had really advanced to their programs were master's degree programs. Now I will say that for those folks, those physical therapists that graduated from a bachelor's degree program in the 80s and 90s, they were still allowed to practice. It was just, if you were going to school to learn to be a physical therapist in 1986, something along those lines, it was a master's degree program, just to be clear on that. And then we come to the 1990s. And I know that I graduated from respiratory school in 93. Terry graduated a year or two before me, 91, 92. So it's really kind of our paradigm where the on-the-job trainings in the state of New Jersey, but many, many states took very similar action in about the same time frame. They really shifted to minimum of a certificate and really gravitating towards an associate's degree. And the on-the-job trainees were really required to go back and, you know, basically take the academic, you know, the 4 credit courses, you know, earn the certificate in order to continue to practice and, you know, continue their license, etc. While physical therapists, so we're kind of doing the associate's degree certificate thing, they're moving towards masters only, and now you start to see some of these doctorate programs starting to pop up in the 90s and, you know, very early 2000s. And then here we are in the 2000s, and we have, you know, AS programs, bachelor's degree programs, and but the predominantly many of the programs are associate's degree programs. And I'll talk a little bit more about, you know, COARC is the accrediting body that accredits the respiratory therapy education programs. Talk a little bit about some of the developments that have happened over the past few years there. Whereas, again, my colleague Nancy Kirsch, she's like, they're DPTs. They graduate from these programs, new grads, or doctorate in physical therapy. Okay. And the thing is, so, you know, likewise, you can kind of imagine that the pay scales are reflective to a large extent. Now, I will tell you that the pay scales that I'm reflecting here are nationwide. Okay. So, for example, just to kind of do a little bit of a fast forward here, and you look to, you know, 2020, I know we're in 2022. There's obviously been some movement in the past 18 months, give or take, where, you know, the hourly, you know, wage and the salaries for respiratory therapists have been boosted up by, you know, crudely. And I'm not talking about the agency workforce, the traveler workforce. I'm talking about the folks that are doing home care full time for a home care company, the folks that work in acute care hospitals, which, you know, the vast majority, roughly 75 to 80% of the respiratory therapists, not necessarily they don't necessarily work in the ICU, but they work in acute care hospitals. Okay. So you could see in the 80s, you could see that that's, you know, the difference there, that relatively new grad physical therapists were making about 18 to 20,000. Respiratory therapists were making 13 to 15,000. I will tell you, my first job, and I'm pausing as I'm saying this to you. So my first job, let's look at the 90s. My first job at University Hospital in 93-ish. I was making about 35,000, 33 to 35,000. So the starting pay was not, you know, all that great in comparison. The spread between us and physical therapy was about $10,000. When you go to, you know, the year 2000, you could see that spread is relatively consistent. And then you have, you know, kind of the slope of the angle gets steeper for, physical therapy. And some of that has to do with the DPT, the doctor of physical therapy. Okay. The 65,000 for respiratory therapists, that's a kind of a national average, and it's actually a little bit higher now, as I alluded to a little bit earlier on. So how did they do it? That was my question to Nancy Kirsch. I was like, I know a little bit, I know a little bit about it. I was just like, I don't mean to in any way minimize or demean what physical therapists do. Okay. But I scratch my head and I'm like, one of my subsequent slides, I talk about, have you ever heard them overhead page physical therapy stat to anything? Who's showing up in an RRT or a code blue? I mean, it's one or more respiratory therapists, obviously nurses and physicians as well. But I've just never seen it. And I scratch my head saying, man, Dave, what they do is valuable, but let's face it, it's not as acute. Okay, the care that they provide is not as acute. The evidence for some of the stuff that they do is also not as robust. So it's this weird irony that I just kind of like scratch my head and like, okay, sometimes you don't have to understand everything in the world around you. You just got to you can try to drill down and understand it better, but you may not get there fully. So how did physical therapy advance the profession? Funding, okay. The Association for Physical Therapy, their dues are roughly $295, 3 times that for the AARC. By the way, folks, I am not purporting that the AARC increase our annual dues to $300 a year or anything along those lines. But the significance is what they did with that money. Okay, better funding means better resources to hire, to enlist lobbyists. And you say, well, lobbyists, they're bad people. Well, good or bad. I'm pretty agnostic. But I can tell you on the state level, the way we get things done from a legislative perspective it's very difficult. You may actually get an appointment with a legislative assistant for the state or federal representative that represents where you live. Okay, where you live. But it doesn't mean anything's going to happen as a result of that. Okay, it's not going to hurt to do it. It's something that you should definitely try to do as far as advancing the profession, trying to get, like, for instance, in New Jersey, we're trying to get ECMO added back to our licensure scope of practice. Okay, in a lot of states it's already there. Okay, we're well aware of that, and it was in New Jersey up until about 25 years ago, something along those lines. The way those changes happen, I'm going to tell you now, is largely through lobbyists and largely through getting the state society to engage others, to get their if you will, membership in the AARC and their active participation in the meetings and the initiatives to get a critical mass of people. So it's through lobbying, it's also through grassroots efforts. Recruitment efforts. So, again, if you're better funded, you can do more as far as marketing and recruitment. There's power in numbers, okay? And again, there's variability. It's actually more, there's about 225,000 physical therapists. It's actually more than 130,000 RTs. The numbers, bumped up from there. It is interesting. It's bumped up to see what happens with, there's been a significant amount of retirements in the field of respiratory, and it's anticipated there's going to be many more, a disproportionately larger amount. I think Gary's going to talk to that when he actually presents. Barriers to entry. So there's about 200 accredited PT programs and between 450 and 440, 450 and 475 respiratory care programs. I say that because even in my home state of New Jersey, there's 2 new bachelor's programs in Southern New Jersey that are going to be opening. Okay, so obviously there's some fluctuation in those numbers. Very competitive to gain entry into physical therapy programs. So, they have 5 to 10 applicants for every physical therapy student spot. Expensive tuition. There's even, because it's a graduate level. And the tuition's expensive, but, working conditions are really good. The pay is decent. I could go on, but, well organized. So physical therapy had what they call Vision 2020. And, we've had 2015 and beyond. So we've had things, but theirs was, this is the part I really needed to talk to some of my physical therapy colleagues who had been, active in their professional associations. And it was a big deal. It wasn't just They didn't just talk the talk and write the documents. They actually, really did a great job of following through. They really do a wonderful job of engaging their physical therapist constituents into active involvement in some of these initiatives. So could go on. They have what's called direct access, so they can get direct reimbursement, which respiratory therapists cannot. Again, many of the procedures that are done or assisted by respiratory in the hospital, there's not charges for that revert back to respiratory care for vent patient checks. There are charges for certain other things. There's actually charges for breathing treatments, charges for pulmonary function testing, things along those lines. But a lot of the things we do are not, they're directly reimbursed, or the hospital is not directly reimbursed. Respiratory therapists themselves, even though they have licensure, they do not get reimbursed directly. There were a few pilot programs to try to see, to try to make that happen. It really didn't grab a good foothold. And again, all the actual PT programs are all at the doctoral level. Valuable services. Okay, so this is, again, hopefully nobody's insulted. I'm not anti-physical therapy, but they and physical therapy assistants do a range of motion and ambulation. I've really noticed in the past few years, because of the data, the research data that has emerged on early mobility, even in the ICU, early mobility, that basically sitting is better than laying, sitting at the end of the bed safely, spotted by somebody, is better than just, sitting up in semi-Fowlers or high Fowlers. Standing is better than sitting. Walk, you get the idea. And physical therapists is frankly a big part of that. So physical therapy, they're having a much greater presence in the ICUs, in addition to all the other valuable services they provided, historically. During the COVID peak, they helped us they were on proning teams. It was just kind of interesting because they weren't laid off, so they made calls to patients regarding testing results and things along those lines. In a separate presentation, this presentation, nor is my next presentation a presentation on COVID. But I kept a diary. I did. I kept a log, whatever you want to call it, during the first wave, for the first several months. And then I got more sporadic. But I just, because I figured I'm going to forget, my brain is going to block some of this stuff out. But one of my entries is, I came home, my wife, who works now outpatient, my wife's a nurse, she works outpatient. And she goes to me, she works at the same organization. She works at the same organization I do. She comes and she goes, did you see the videos they posted on the internet, for the organization I work with? And I was like, no, I didn't. And I watched them very quickly. And everybody who was in those videos, like, there were people who were available to be videoed. So they were like all these rah, COVID, we're going to beat COVID and all this stuff. And the people are parading and giving the thumbs up and whatever the case may be. And a lot of them were either, they were physical therapists, they were nurses doing, that were doing outpatient work. My wife was not in it, but, doing outpatient work, whatever. They were, general practitioner physicians, things along those lines. The people that were in the trenches weren't there. Okay, so it was like, oh, I know that he's a physical therapist. He's in the, yeah, man, that's cool. It's a really good video. But meanwhile, we're like locked in the ICUs. Anyhow, sorry, I went there for a minute or two. This is physical, that they don't do invasive procedures, intubation, ABGs, A-line insertions, bronchoscopy setup and assist, blah, blah, blah. They don't respond to COVID blues. They don't do 24/7 coverage. I never have heard, maybe you guys have, by the way. So later, if I'm wrong on this, you guys can smack me around later on, figuratively speaking. You have to hear a physical therapy stat, just, whatever. RT research tends to be much stronger than that in PT. So one of my other colleagues, she actually edits a textbook in physical therapy, and she's scratching her head saying, I'm writing about this, and she's actually an epidemiologist in addition to being a physical therapist. Very brilliant woman. And she's saying, Al, for some of the things the procedures I read about, there's the research to back it up is sparse. Okay. It doesn't mean that it's sparse on everything they do. It's not. Okay. It's actually robust in certain areas. But if you were to compare hours, okay, lung protective strategies, all of that, ARDS, NET, just different boutique modes of ventilation, different medication, things along those lines. It's stronger. It's stronger than that in physical therapy. Yet they've managed to advance their profession. AARC. So some of the things, some of the things that we have actually done. AARC, in the 2015 and beyond. There are some similarities between that and PT's Vision 2020. There'll be subsequent updates to that as well. Increased number of bachelor's degree programs, because again, basically 2015 and beyond was all about, advancing our profession, things that we need to do. Few states have required the RRT credential for licensure, including New Jersey. By the way, that looks like it's still in effect in New Jersey, but it looks like it's in danger. So we still allow CRTs to practice in New Jersey. The ones that were grandfathered in, that came into the field 10 and 20 years ago. But new grads in New Jersey currently need to earn the RRT credential to practice. Okay. And, I could go on down that rabbit hole. I'm going to spare you, and I'm not going to actually go there. And in the AARC, the entry requirements for respiratory therapy practice 2030, okay, minimum of a bachelor's degree in respiratory therapy or health sciences, have earned the RRT credential. Now that's aspirational, okay? That's the goal, okay? What I can tell you is, again, not just New Jersey, but other states that have gone the direction of only RRT can get a new grad RRT can get a license. Some of them are reconsidering that, okay? Again, I alluded before to COARC, okay, the Committee on Accreditation for Respiratory Care, COARC. COARC stopped accrediting associate's degree programs so they stopped several years back, up until several months back. Actually, Terry and I were on a Zoom with Gary, and Gary was saying, because I knew that it was coming up for consideration, and it had just it had just been announced. So it's a few months old, give or take. Respiratory care advanced practitioner. So we talk about that. There's, my colleague at Rush University. That's something that that Rush is looking at very, closely. Rush offers not just a bachelor's, but a master's in respiratory care, but they're really looking at the advanced practitioner for respiratory care very, very closely. AARC, New Jersey Society of Respiratory Care, licensing board, like PT, have used lobbyists to advance our initiatives. I could go on about that, but part of the CEU requirement for licensure emanated from that, and that's been tweaked since it actually came into practice. And it relates to I looked down the attendee list both yesterday and today, and there's some of my folks I went to school with, some folks I taught. Christina, I'm not going to mention your last name, but Christina and I work at the same hospital together as well. So, there's several people that are here in New Jersey. Again, please don't be offended. I realize there's a lot of people that are not from New Jersey. Winsome, so 2 bachelor's degree programs, South Jersey, did FYI, kind of a trivia, Rowan, which is kind of in a suburb of, it's very much in a suburb of Philadelphia. You can actually see Philadelphia from Rowan. And Stockton is directly across the state, South Jersey, but basically Atlantic City, New Jersey. They also have, campuses that are very, closely located to that area, to the Atlantic City area. But their main campus now for Stockton is literally right on the water. It's a beautiful spot. New Jersey telehealth law, but a lot of the other states have followed suit. 2017 definitions. And one of the nice things is laws like that in New Jersey and elsewhere. But I can tell you definitively, in New Jersey, when that law defines what a healthcare provider is, they specifically mention among many others, respiratory therapists. So we got a little mention there. Ohio State University, Master of Respiratory Therapy, Advanced Practice. So Ohio State is one. I mentioned Rush before, and I don't mean to just single them out, but Ohio State has really been at the kind of forefront when it comes to respiratory therapy education. So I ruthlessly took this and just, basically Shauna and some of the others that, have been involved in this initiative, basically, published a piece that really talked about it. It was more of a editorial, and this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. Well, if you want more information, this is where you're going. Really acknowledging the motivation for it. That, let's face it, the respiratory care in the, again, I realize I'm probably speaking to folks that have been in the field much longer than I have. Again, I'm about 30, 31 years. Terry's a couple of years more than that. Gary is several years more than that. So 30 years kind of is what it is. But in that span of time, there's been not just medications. I can't even keep track of all the DPIs, dry powder inhalers. But it's also, you think about, things like, okay, high flow has been used a long time, but only in the past decade or so has it been used so widely with adult patients. Things like ECMO. ECMO was used on babies, and again, the data in the past decade or maybe 12 or 13 years has really said this can be helpful to adults. So, and think of all the modes of ventilation, APRV, other modes of ventilation, things like Medineps, okay, just a plethora of things. Yet these programs were cramming all of this education into, in many cases, into an associate's degree program. Very, very, very challenging. So, it causes the early adopters, the Ohio States and the Rush universities, it causes them to say, wait a minute, we got to be offering bachelor's, we got to be offering a master's degree program, because this is the level that it really, that's just the level that it's at. So I am at Rutgers University. I've been there 27, give or take, years. And by the time, so what had happened was I also have taught for a couple of decades, designed and deliver courses related to healthcare management, because I have an MBA, I have some business background. I did some research, including my dissertation on institutional healthcare quality. So I had moved on partially to teach graduate level healthcare management, leadership, strategic planning, quality courses. Okay. And my colleague, Narc Rodriguez, had taken over as the program director for what was then the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey. And in 2016, we got a new dean. She had a different vision, and she got rid of several, mainly undergraduate programs. Respiratory, so UMDNJ had 2 respiratory programs, one in northern New Jersey. You can actually, from my office, you could see New York City, so about 20 or so miles out of New York City. And then they had one that was down in South Jersey, not far from Philadelphia. Her vision was, I don't really want to do, the undergraduate education, unless you can really make a good case. We thought we made the case. She didn't. So she eliminated the program. She also eliminated dental hygiene, big demand for dental hygienists as well. So we scratched our head, but it was what it was. So we did what we regarded as a lot of the right things, because we contacted the AARC and we got some insight from them when something like this is looming. How can you potentially fight it? So we ended up, myself and 2 of my colleagues, ended up in, Cory Booker is one of the 2 federal senators in New Jersey, but his office is right in North New Jersey, where UMD/Rutgers is located. And we got an appointment, saw his legislative assistants, and we didn't really get too far. We submitted petitions. Really, the students were very active. They actually protested. They had actually literally picketed. It's got industry support, a lot of letter writing. Students protested, etc. But in the end, the program was eliminated and graduated its last class in 2017. So that was a very, very big setback. Again, we've not succeeded. When you notice where we haven't succeeded, it's like this slide is gray. It's a gray day. 2015 and beyond. So we haven't delivered on some of these initiatives. So my colleague Bob Kazmarek, he passed away, unfortunately, about going on 2 years now. And Bob was very vocal. God bless him. He was so vocal about, okay, we're talking the talk with 2015 and beyond, but what are we doing? And he and Tom Barnes and some others, they published some pieces saying, come on, let's act on some of this stuff. Let's just not talk it. And he wasn't banished, but he took some heat for that, quite frankly. But 2015, again, there's some good that has come out of that. I'm not saying it was just all talk, but we still have mostly associate's degree programs. Most states, license CRTs, many, I'd say many still license new grad CRTs. Education, we talked about the program, but it's not just, by the way, it's not just UMDNJ. The programs are closed, they've closed. That particularly at the associate's degree level, these programs don't make money. The tuition it's a great bargain for the students, but it's very hard to underwrite all the resources, the faculty, mainly it's faculty, but the equipment you need, the state-of-the-art ventilators. You could use simulators. You can, the manufacturers will leave a ventilator in your lab for 2 to 4 weeks, but it's not yours. Okay, so these programs are fairly expensive to run, and they typically run in the red. So they're vulnerable in that regard. Licensure updates are controversial issues going on again in many states, not just in New Jersey. Licensing of new grad CRTs, lack of name recognition. What's an RT? So we got some of that recognition through COVID, and I think it seems like it's not just I think. It seems like there's some slippage backward. That there were some Sanjay Gupta on CNN and some others that were mentioning. Sometimes they called us respiratory techs, but irrespective, we got some some notoriety. Again, I could go on and on about that, but I think there's been some slippage backward. RTs often sometimes we're our own worst enemy. This I'm too busy to get involved mentality. Many RTs don't pursue higher degrees. Now with the agency and overtime, things along those lines, it's fine. And I'm not saying that people got to pay their bills, but I'm all for you can do that, and you can still have a life, but you can still advance yourself so that you can give something back to the profession that maybe has given to you. Healthcare organization leadership issues, that's something that could really go down the rabbit hole, but we talked a little bit about this yesterday, including in our panel discussion. But the higher up you go in the food chain, in many, not all, in many healthcare organizations, in many hospital systems, the less they're tuned in to any notable degree on what's happening in the trenches. So it's just like, again, could go on and on about it, but if you think about some of the things I alluded to yesterday, some of the electronic health record templates, they're crappy. If the leaders had to use them, they would have been fixed soon. Okay, it's almost like our health care system. If Congress had to enroll in Medicare, it would be better in many respects. It may even be like cheaper, but it would be more efficient. It would be better, but they don't. They have a Cadillac plan. Trust me. So the healthcare leadership issues, this chasm, this lack of understanding of what goes on at the bedside, and how what they do and say affects people at the bedside, and affects things like morale, and affects the overall the extent to which people feel committed to the organization and their profession. So again, in my next presentation and in the other presentations you're going to hear today, you'll get more on that in our workforce and some of the trends that are becoming more common and pervasive. Respiratory care 2015 and beyond, the paradox, increasing complexity of respiratory care, and then just biomedical innovation. More sophistication of mechanical ventilation, not just the ventilators, but the modes of ventilation. It's a little bit maddening. Not maddening like I'm not mad, but it can make you nuts when you think about all different modes of ventilation. And then you get a new medical director, and he or she likes APRV, and you get another medical director, and they don't really like that. They actually like pressure control, whatever. They like this, they like that. So it can make you a little bit stupefied. More variety of artificial airways, and Shiley just totally changed. They changed their whole ensemble, and then you can't find. They have this little writing on the box to tell you what size it actually is. It's like I don't know who. It's crazy. I don't know if any of you guys have encountered that same thing, but they made this shift over. It was about 6 months ago, and it's a totally different world where it comes to trachs. More variety, again, of artificial airways, more inhaled many more inhaled medications. And really, in part because of, the whole thing with the, fluorocarbon propellants on the older MDIs. We got rid of that. And that really drove some of the cost up. Somebody yesterday was saying that, you don't have to be embarrassed to say you're going to Canada. to get your MDIs. You should, don't be embarrassed. I actually, you shouldn't be embarrassed. We should, the country should be embarrassed, in my view. But in any event, that's something's really, really off. Nothing with you, but it's with our system. If that needs to happen, if you walk across the border and then you find out the medication that you're actually, the MDI is actually manufactured in New Jersey or Florida, it's like, really? Anyhow, more inhaled medication, increased inhaled antibiotics. So you even have TXA, which is for bleeding, tranexamic acid, insulin for diabetes. So, secretion, we have the Metinebs now. And although the data on Metinebs is mixed, it's not negative, but just mixed. Diagnostics, so sleep studies, pulmonary function testing, specialty procedures, ECMO, talked about that as well. So, some in many, not all states, respiratory therapists can do ECMO. I mean, tell you, New York and Pennsylvania, by me, you can. New Jersey, no, not yet. Focused on, so 2015 focused on advancing education and credentialing. And yet, again, still most of these programs are AS. Most states license the CRTs. Education, specifically, so Union County College we currently have 3/4 associate's degree programs that are spitting out students. If you're, I'm an adjunct with County College of Mars, one of those 4. I said 3/4 because Union County College, they actually had gotten rid of the program. They reinstituted it. And it was the last AS degree RT program to be accredited until the decision was made that they're going to start reaccrediting, a newly designed or implemented associate's degree respiratory programs. So kind of that was mostly true, but now not so much. Almost a quarter of the hospitals in California require a respiratory therapist to have a bachelor's degree. Rush University's franchise, so you can actually, this is interesting. So David Vines, one of my colleagues, he's like an associate dean now and chair of the department. So David he's also a friend and a co-editor on Egan's Fundamentals. And what Rush does now is they actually have franchised their BS respiratory therapy program. So conceivably, if you had enough backing, and obviously the right, you can meet co-arc requirements. You need to affiliate with an accredited, college or university. You could actually start the franchise. And interesting, some of the associate's degree programs, a few are actually looking into that. So you have good and you have stuff that's not good. Again, co-arc will again resume. Accrediting associate degree programs, still approximately 80% of the RT programs are at the AS degree. Majority of RT still don't pursue a bachelor's degree. It's like, I'm too busy. I'm making overtime. I'm too busy to do that. Yeah, okay. Licensure, another mixed bag, gained licensure in early 1990s, like my timeline much earlier on in this presentation showed. The licensing board, they meet monthly, but it's a sad, I'm an active member, but we just don't get a lot of people to come, and we're working on that. That's something we've been working on. Like banging pots and pans in the street and stuff like that now. Past issues, gains, CEU requirement, loss of privilege to ECMO, only RRTs can obtain the initial license to practice, although that's, latest issues, consideration, again, considering licensing new CRTs. Emergency out of state. This is kind of fun. This is not funny, but ironic funny. Emergency out of state licensure reciprocity. So if your agency and you're licensed in Pennsylvania or Florida and you're a CRT, you can come to Jersey with reciprocity and work. Okay. Yet, and this is yet if you're a new grad, and you only pass the CRT level, okay, you can't. So it's something that is, it's a paradox. It needs to be fixed. So it's something to, many states are doing the emergency, out of state license reciprocity as well. So it's not just unique to New Jersey or surrounding states. State size, too few doing too much. So too few volunteers, people on the board. And, you say, well, I don't have time to attend the meetings. Well, we're doing most of them by Zoom, and we need, if we ever needed people involved, we need them now. We have these initiatives with ECMO and licensure. And again, we're not the only state who's just trying to do that sort of thing. Some other states really do they're able to do a better job. And you know, when I gave this presentation a little over a year ago, I looked at these people, and I can be very animated. And there was about 150, 200 people in the audience, and I was just like, we need, you know, like we point at you, we need you. And I mean, I knew a lot of people in the audience. So I'm like, I didn't like point at anybody, but one person, but you know, whatever. It's just like we need more involvement. Okay, we're all busy, yeah, including those serving on the board. We have better things to do, you know, and just whatever. In New Jersey, the New Jersey Society of Respiratory Care, NJSRC meets first Wednesday of the month, every other month. Next meeting, you know, again, that next meeting actually is, you know, in this case, it's you know, early in November. And I just put the website on there just for giggles. Apathy sucks. I've always felt this way. You know, even if you fail, you know, I like to see, you know, even my students that, hey, if I get a motivated student, okay, there may be, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but they're not the brightest in the world, but they're motivated and they're working a part-time job, which we discourage, but some of them have to in order to live. You know, you get somebody who's motivated, is working, got a great work ethic, really, you know, is team player, whatever, that's something you can work with. Okay. Whereas you get somebody who's really smart, but they're kind of like, they're on their phone a lot, whatever, you know, they're apathetic, like, you know, I think I'll do this for a while. We'll see what happens, you know, maybe, you know, whatever. It's apathy. Apathy sucks. And hopefully nobody is offended by my saying that, but you know, if you're going to be, if you're not going to be something, don't be apathetic. Sometimes RTs were our own worst enemy. You know, so too many of us view what we do as an occupation. Okay. It pays the bills. This hunter-gatherer, I'll pick up another extra shift. Instead of advancing themselves, I'll pick up another shift. Good, pick up that another shift, but at the same time, get that balance of that extra shift, but also enroll in a you know, abridged associates to bachelor's program. If you have a bachelor's, you know, whatever. Again, you make more money, you spend more money, you get into this thing, you know, this kind of vicious cycle. The moth phenomenon. That's an Al Ewerism. Okay. The moth phenomenon. Okay. Now I was a lead therapist in the ICU. I don't know what I was thinking. I was, you know, 63 years old. I was still a lead therapist in the ICU. What was I thinking? It was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of work. I say to my students, don't be a moth. Okay. What does Al mean by that? Don't be a moth. Don't be somebody who flits in the unit. If you're assigned to surgical ICU, medical ICU, cardiovascular ICU, whatever, you know, NICU, don't flit in and flit out. Yes, by all means, take a break, go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, get your lunch. Absolutely, you know, whatever. But when you do that, let them know, hey, I'm going to lunch. Okay, and I'm on, here's my beeper, or I'm on, you know, we call it Voicera, but you know, you can reach, this is how you can reach me, but I need to leave the unit, or I'm covering the floor. I need to leave the unit because I'm also covering step down. Okay. But don't be one of these people that, you know, you flit into, you do your quick checks and then you flit out and you hide somewhere. I'm not saying any of you would do this, but hide somewhere, go on your phone, you know, check your email. Yeah, do a little bit of that, you know, here and there. But the main commitment is always something you can do. And if you're not there, they will find somebody else to do it. Okay. So the moth phenomenon is don't flit or fly in and out and kind of a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There's always somebody you can help. There's always something you can do. Even that if that person is a physical therapist, a nurse, a patient, you know, you can restock supplies. I mean it. You can change, you know, circuits. There's something that you can do. You can, you know, you have a patient with a condition that you've never heard of. When we first started using tranexamic acid, I didn't really know too much about it. I looked it up. I literally sat in the unit, hey guys, I'm here, but I need to learn more about this, or some condition that you really didn't know too much about. You know, in any event, EBUS. So we're doing the bronchial ultrasound. You know, when we do the assist with bronchoscopies. I wrote about it in one of my textbooks. I educated myself on it and spoke to somebody, you know, physicians that actually do it. But it's always something you can do. Openly complaining, and do I complain? Yeah, I do occasionally, whatever, about pay, workloads. Workloads are definitely something to complain about these days, but don't become part of the, you know, they could become part of the solution. You know, uninvolved in department initiatives, disengaged from professional organizations. I've listed them here. The last one there is the American College of Healthcare Executives. Again, I mentioned yesterday, Gary Kaufman, one of our speakers today, is he's a fellow, not just in the AARC. I'm only a member in the American College of Healthcare Executives, but it's a lot of interesting stuff. Gives you a perspective on what's going on, what drives our healthcare system. Okay, and some of the really you know, interesting things that are going on including what I mentioned, in yesterday's session about, or another session about the whole carbon footprint is becoming a very big, there's a set of requirements that are going to be put in place to have healthcare organizations minimize their carbon footprint because they contribute in a disproportionate way to global warming and production of carbon dioxide. Burden, healthcare leadership issues, the burden of command. So it's not easy. I don't want to make it sound like the leaders, not just of our department, but of our organization. It's not an easy job. If I inferred that, if anyone interpreted that, I didn't mean to. But organizational leaders have a tough job, fast-paced. Healthcare is one of the most complex industries. Shrinking resources with reimbursement. Things like some are newly promoted. So a lot of people that are in these positions, managers positions, they had a couple extra initials after the name. They know what CMS is, but there's a lot of things, contextual, environmental things that they're not familiar with. They haven't done budgeting before. They're learning on the job. Or the healthcare system sends them to a 4-hour class on budgeting. And they're only human. They make mistakes like you, me, I make mistakes, you make mistakes, we all do. Organizational leaders often removed from the work. So understanding the work is more than just reviewing, electronic health record reports. Conflicting goals, they have, the financial goal may conflict with that associated with patient care. They may look good on, on the budgeting if they have, lower staffing levels, or they now have a more less experienced staff that they don't have to pay as much. But again, they may have done that at the expense of, not having enough resource people who are more experienced. The leadership style fits all situations. I'm not going to, basically read this slide to you, but you have autocratic or coercive. Some of the leadership during the first surge of COVID needed to shift in this, autocratic. I need this done. I can't go into the how and why right now. Trust me. I just need you to trust me on this. So it's like sometimes when something needs to be done right away, the coercive or autocratic is the way to go. But ultimately, for the long run, okay, a democratic or participative, approach is very helpful to morale. You have some mixed, styles as well. Transformational is one of the styles that's espoused by the, some of the nursing accreditation bodies and the Magnet, but some of the others as well. And really, transformational is just, creative leader, inspires the team, dream big. To me, it sounds like some of it sounds like jazz talk. It sounds like kind of cool words, whatever. But it's there's some good stuff in it as well. Pace setting is where they actually get in there and do it. Or we've had our managers come in a few days when we're so short that just helping out. Nothing, a good crisis by COVID, strengths, communication updates, vaccines, weaknesses, rapidly changing protocols. Even one in our case where they were saying they were running out of masks, so they said maybe we should use bandanas. It's like, no, you use a bandana. I'm not using a bandana. I'm using a PAPR. Damn it! This is just stuff, just crazy stuff. Our organization's COVID response survey didn't even list us. So you could check, are you a doctor, are you a nurse, are you a rad tech, whatever, didn't even list respiratory. So how tone deaf could you possibly be? Again, these high reliability organizations. So, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But again, you get organizations that maybe, a crisis like that, where that you have a 5-hospital system and they're treating patients with hypoxemic respiratory failure very differently in one location versus another, again, under the same organizational umbrella. That's not high reliable. That's highly reliable. That's something else. That's, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Take home message, don't rely on, others. You should rely on others. No man, no woman's an island, but, don't rely on them solely. Some people are where they are because that's where they put themselves. They spend too much time on the couch or on their device, and they're just not, they're not advancing themselves. So, ask not what your profession can do for you. You could ask that too, by the way. That's okay to ask that, but don't only ask that. Okay, what can you do for your profession? A colleague of mine, he's a friend of mine, basically was kind of, I don't know, he was in this thing of, I'm a really good therapist, and I'm a really good therapist. And I stopped him and said, you are a really, really, really good therapist, okay? But I know some better. And the thing that you don't do, and I called him on it, is you don't get involved. You still have an associate's degree. You haven't advanced yourself. Yeah, but there's a lot of things that you haven't done. Okay, you don't get involved in state society. You don't get involved locally. So the thing is, Terry, myself, Gary, and a lot of other people, we do a lot of this stuff. We get involved. Okay, but it's the burden on us, and probably some of you can be kind of intense. We need more help. Engaging with your professional organizations. Again, I'm mentioning here New Jersey Society of Respiratory Care. It could be the Pennsylvania Society. It could be the California Society. In Pennsylvania, they actually have two. They have the Eastern region and the Western region. So some of those big states, the AARC, licensing board, your employers, don't expect them to do it for you. Further advancement will require, these collective efforts, individuals engaging, trying to maintain the right attitude, even if you do catch yourself complaining. And again, I complain, but it's just like try to catch yourself and say, you know what? Sometimes you can become your words. Okay, if you complain, you start thinking more negatively. Your words start. Sometimes even if you don't totally believe it, if you change the vernacular, if you just catch yourself, okay, and work on being a more positive person, okay. And again, I'm a work in progress. I'm saying this emphatically because this is something that I'm working on too. I can be one of these people that call up, you never have to wonder what I'm thinking. I'm a very upfront person, but I will never stab you in the back. Okay. And I will try to explain why I feel the way that I feel. And, individuals need to be involved. Organization. So, and it could be you as an individual getting involved in an organization such as licensing board and it helping advance our profession. Strategy for the individual, grant me the serenity, certain things you can't change, are just like, they're just like pushing, it's going to be very difficult to change, but there's things that you can influence, okay? Things are hard to change, complexity of healthcare, shrinking resources, things that may be possible to influence, okay? People's attitude towards you, intelligent approach to work, smarter work, things that perhaps can be changed, your engagement in professional organizations and our profession, your academic and continuing education. Obviously, you're here, so the continuing education part you're doing. Cultivating a diverse skill set. What I always say to my students, try to be as comfortable behind a device as you are with a hammer in your hand and with whatever, maybe a paintbrush, literally, if you're artistically inclined, but have a diverse skill set. It'll also help you be more grounded and have more self-confidence that if something happened, you could actually do something else for a living. In any event, I don't think respiratory is going away, by the way, but it's just nice to be able to, even if it's just for an advocation, a release, be able to do stuff. I love gardening. I love digging in the dirt. It's just me. And it's just like, whatever, it grounds me. Like working with my hands as well. Your contribution to patient and organizational outcomes, your attitude, lose the victim mentality. Okay, you win some and you lose some. And I will tell you, I've had my successes, folks, and I've had my failures. Just be abundantly clear, okay? So I'm not one of these people that has won every game that they've been in. And I've probably learned a lot more from my failures, whether they be abject failures or just partial, I wish I had done better. Just self-reflection. Further your education, so, again, the bachelor's, the master's, they don't have to get a PhD, but just, even if you have an associate's degree, you don't have to go get a bachelor's, but stay educated. As you encounter things that you don't understand, educate yourself on them, ask questions, participate in rounds, not just so you can contribute to the rounds, but that you can learn as well about, maybe more, boutique or discrete diseases and how they're treated and things along those lines. Specialty designations, things like the adult acute care and the peds neo specialty and things along those lines. Be engaged, make us essential at the bedside. Become an expert. Knowledge is power, indeed. Not that you want to overpower people, but it'll empower you. Pursue excellence, even if you fail, you will. You will. If you pursue excellence, you absolutely will fall short of excellence sometimes. Okay. The more you do it, the closer you'll get more often. Accept and pursue opportunities, learn new skills. And I just mentioned Bronx, A-lines, ECMO, the list could go on. Be resilient, no substitute for perseverance and resilience, okay? You will fail, okay? Abraham Lincoln lost many elections. He actually suffered a nervous breakdown. He had some tough times. Okay, he's also one of our greatest leaders. Right? It really does. It inspires me. You know, I read history because I want to learn about these things. Because sometimes we think, oh, people like Lincoln, they succeeded at everything they did. They didn't. Just to be abundantly clear, actively participate patient rounds in other informed suggestions. Volunteer for extra initiatives. If you work at a place where your input is not valued, eventually, I'm not saying you should leave tomorrow. Find a place where it is. There's places, corporate cultures vary, just like regular cultures. Be engaged, professional organizations. Talked about that. I'm actually looking at it. We are the time here. Strategies for organizational leaders. Support your profession, support your constituent employees. People need to feel supported, whether it's your husband or wife, your best friend, your brother, your sister, whatever the case may be. People need to feel supported. Doesn't mean in everything they do, but they need to feel like you got your back. If you have that, people will follow you. I mean, in a good way. People will trust you and they'll follow you. Speaking of trust but verify. You trust people, but people are going to do a little zhazh and a little cut corners. It's good to cut corners once in a while, but there's corners that are bad to cut. Welcome input from others. Use autocratic, these authoritarian, leadership styles very sparingly. Minimize the silly things you do which undermine trust and response and your credibility. Professional organizations, make recruitment a priority, participation easier, hold yourself accountable. Then again, this is just some of the initiatives more locally that we have, the conference, things along those, and we have subcommittees. And we tend to have too many of the same people doing this stuff, but we're working on it. We're a work in progress. Licensing board, and just kind of giving some information here. The head of our licensing board is also a friend of mine. We talk a lot. We don't agree on everything, by the way. We don't agree on everything, but we can talk. The good thing is we can talk, very openly about things. The AARC, again, some of the things that I've mentioned earlier, but again, you can also, in addition to joining, you can also join these subspecialties. If you work in home care, acute care management, they have a lot of good subspecialties, and they're only a few dollars more to actually, and it gives you access to a lot of information on those subspecialties. Key points: advance from auction techs, whatever, auction techs, whatever, auction jockeys, I've heard. Now a valuable member of the patient care team. It's not going away. I don't think it's going away. I really don't. The nurses don't really want our job. They have plenty of stuff to do. However, our advancement is at a crossroads, lags behind other professions. It's not going to happen through osmosis. Lots of exciting initiatives are out there. Okay. And again, I love simulations. So I'm not going to bore you with all that, but hopefully soon I'll put together a presentation on simulations in respiratory care and healthcare. Gotten a couple articles, peer-reviewed articles published on it, but it's something that I've just been, a couple of grants I've gotten through the years, nothing huge, but, just a cool thing to do. And make you more skilled. And you can also, by getting involved in that way with simulation, you can also help others get more skilled. So actions which each of us can do to advance our profession. It's not going to happen through osmosis. Get involved, stay engaged, be persistent. Some key references here. With that, I want to thank you guys all for enduring this presentation. Hopefully you got something out of it. If I sound evangelical, it's because I believe everything I just said. This was not just a presentation for a presentation. It was from my heart and soul. And I want to see more people get engaged. I want to see our profession become everything that it potentially can. With that, again, I want to thank you for joining us today, for joining AET Lectures, and we hope you come back. Thank you.